I'm Madelyn Blair, and this is Unlocked. If you're serious about your career, this show is for you, because this is a show all about opening possibilities so that when you're hit with the unexpected, you have options from which to choose. Now, speaking of choices, I'm delighted that you chose to be with us today. Our topic is Be the CEO of Your Career. You know, in this country, a CEO is someone we look up to, we aspire to becoming one. I think it's because we think they're in control, at the top of the heap, making the big bucks. But I want to look a bit deeper today. You know, the word executive is derived from the word execute, which comes from the Latin exequi. No, it's exequi, if I pronounce that correctly, meaning to follow up or punish. Wow. Now, in the 14th century, it meant to inflict capital punishment. And guess what? Execute means that today as well. But when the word became executive in the 17th century, it meant capable of performance. Yet when I think of an executive, I think of command, direction, leading. Performance is now generally in respect to what has actually been achieved by the employees of the business, not the executive per se. So the key to aspiring to be a CEO is to be able to visualize the future, visualize it so well, in fact, that you can convey that to whomever you wish to lead, your employees, so that they will work to achieve it. There's a bit of visioning, a bit of inspiring, a bit of correcting, and even a bit of encouragement. But to me, that executive, the key is to visualize. Now, if you're going to be the CEO of your career, you have to begin with visualizing the goal. And in today's world, that can be overwhelming. But I'm going to stop here, as my guest will have much more to say about that. And we're going to take a short break so that you can think about, what would you like to ask our guest if you were in my seat? So stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Unlocked. I'm Madelyn Blair, your host. And our guest today is Carol Ann Wentworth. Welcome, Carol Ann, to Unlocked.
Good morning, Madelyn, from sunny California.
Ah, great. Is the weather as beautiful there as it is here right now?
It's the beautiful crisp fall weather, yes, and love it.
Wonderful. Well, let me tell the audience a little bit about who you are, and then we're going to jump into our conversation, because I'm so excited to have Carol Ann with me. And you're going to be too when when you hear what she's bringing to the table. She began her career as the founder and CEO of Carolan International Modeling and Talent. She was also the former CEO of the Sausalito and Woodland Hills Chambers of Commerce. Today, she is CEO of Wentworth Executive Recruiting, and she is the co-author of an amazing book called A Mindful, get that on the camera, A Mindful Career. This book, Carolan, I've got to tell them, this is almost 400 pages of really good practical advice. I mean, listen to this. Listen to this. She's talking about the importance of place, in a career, the place is important. She says you have to think about the professional opportunities of where you're going to live, the aesthetics, the recreational opportunities, the climate, the geography, the cost of living, the proximity to family and friends, the potential mates. I mean, now that's practical advice. So, Carolan, welcome again to Unlocked.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here, Madelyn. I'm honored to be on your show and very excited to share the wisdom that I've gleaned over 35 years of doing this type of work.
Oh, I love it when we can harvest that kind of wisdom, as you called it. Yeah. I love to begin by helping our audience know that you're more than just the CEO, because I'll tell you what my question is. When was the moment that you, Carolan, knew you could do more?
Wow. The moment, I have to honestly say, was when I was 25 years old. And I had the opportunity to attend a conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I heard the #1 person in the world speak. And he was with the Shaklee Corporation, vitamins. So this goes back in the 80s. And he happened to be on a stage with Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, Anthony Robbins, before he was who he is today. Oh my goodness, there were 7 amazing humans. And it was a cold winter day. And what do you do but go to conferences in Minnesota? And I went by myself and I sat in the front row and I was a couple hundred feet away from the stage. And as I heard the wisdom about possibility thinking, and that if you believe in yourself and if you trust the process, however that is, however it shows up for you, there's not anything you can accomplish or manifest in your life. And of course, that, like I said, that goes back 35 years. And I feel very fortunate because I locked into that way of thinking immediately. And the first book I had, and I still today, and it's real worn and torn, is called The Magic of Thinking Big by Schwartz. And I will definitely get you my book list after this, because it was one of those moments that I knew in my heart that I could have control of my career. And I waited around. I was actually the last person, because I wanted to get the book that this gentleman, Bob Holker, had written, who at the time was that person in Shaklee. And I waited about an hour. I actually got the last book and we connected. I could feel this energy. It was such a positive energy. And 6 months later, he actually called me to come out and interview with him to be his secretary or executive assistant at that time. And it was all because of that gut feeling I had in that moment. And I've had many, many since. I am so blessed. I've had an amazing career. And for that, I'm grateful.
Oh, that's an amazing story. And I was thinking, I wish I had had that lesson at 25. Would have given me so many more years to work on this. Well, you've spent a lot of your career in specifically recruitment. And I think today that's one of the areas that's, I think is fairly important, both to leaders as well as to applicants. So I'd like to talk just a little bit about recruitment, because I'm curious how it has changed over the years.
So the first thing, I always like to educate anyone that I'm working with, either as a candidate or even a client. And definitely, just anyone I'm speaking to in general. And it's first to understand the four various verticals of recruitment. And staffing is one division. Contingency agencies is a second. The third is executive search, which I have done 90% of my life. And then the fourth, of course, is general job boards. And actually, the fifth would be HR departments with corporations, that receive resumes from their posting on websites. So what I have seen, first of all, is that so many people have gotten into this vertical to help people. And so it's a lot of competition. And what concerned me, I've worked in every vertical. I've worked in staffing, I worked in contingency, and I worked in executive search. And so based on my experience, I was always drawn to the executive search. And it was because the mentors I've had in my life in that space were two of the finest gentlemen that really showed how to make every person you come in contact with matter, that they're not a number, they're not a dollar sign. They weren't about filling a quota. So I knew that resonated with the way I did a mindful approach. And so having said that, to understand those divisions, that will also help you in your search. Because in a staffing agency, when I worked in that discipline, you were literally, I felt like a minion. You were required to look through anywhere from 200 to 1,000 resumes a day, depending on the search or requisition you had. And you had to find that golden nugget. Then you'd weed it down to 10 to talk to. And then if you didn't get a hold of them, then it'd be 5 to get 3 to present, right? And it was a real numbers game. And I didn't like that because I didn't think it was fair to that person that took the time to send in a resume. Actually, my colleague, Deborah Barda, who works with me, we were talking about this the other day, and it was to the point that every person took the time. I want to let them know they matter. And so we're even to a point where we will, when given the opportunity, respond to every resume. There's been times where I know if the resume format was different, they would be seen by my client. So I'll write them a note back and say, Madelyn, here are a few things I suggest because I want to present you. However, can you do this for me? And I've even written resumes late at night because I believed in that person so much. So I think if you do your homework as a person in search, looking, right? Google, what are the best resume formats? How can I present my brand? What is my brand? How should I be seen?
Oh, wow. Fantastic. And you're right. You have to use the tools that are now available. I mean, when I remember 35 years ago what you were talking about, and there weren't places where you could go on and just throw in your resume or go to another site and figure out how to do your resume. So now you have tremendous tools to really aid. Also, I bet you that staffer doesn't read thousands of resumes anymore. The machines.
No, you know what? That's an excellent point because the AI today, artificial intelligence, the thing I saw when I was in a contingency agency 10 years ago, that bothered me because it would only pick up on keywords. And so even though it would push in certain resumes to me, when I would go deep on the resume, I got so good at reading the people's stories. In other words, I could tell if there was a gap, it probably was a human story. Either they had to take care of their parents or they had to move or they went through a divorce. So then to me, I wanted to know that human story because I did not let that define them. Rather, I wanted to understand, and what did they do during that time? How did they react? That emotional intelligence part. Because that is what sets us apart in what we do as a firm. I want to know that when I represent you, that you can handle change And not that, and we're all going through it. Oh my goodness, we have gotten a boatload of it over the last 3 years with COVID. So we've had to learn how to adjust. And that's when we talk later, I really bring in the mindset, the importance of mind, body, soul, because that will ground you, and it will also help you tell your story in an authentic way and not be apologetic. Because today, that's the beauty that I have when I represent someone to my client. I can tell your story. So if you did have a hardship, or I recently had someone that had cancer and was out of the loop for 3 years, and they were like, how do I even get back in and tell my story, because it wasn't my fault? And I said, you're right, it wasn't. It's life. So tell me what you did do. What did you read? Did you exercise? And then I was able to bring that into the story. And then they overcame it, right?
Yes.
Because life happens. And that's part of the whole, what I call the career dance.
Career dance. Oh, I love it. Carol Ann, I thinking back to my career when I had human resource people who were, supposedly helping me. Boy, I wish I could have told them that kind of thing. Because every person does bring a story, and that it makes them unique. And then sometimes it also brings capabilities that another person wouldn't have because of that experience. The title here is that we're going to talk about being the CEO of our career. And I'm really curious. A lot of the managers that I have worked with in the past really didn't want to know if their person had a sense of where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do. They just said, no, they do the job and that's it. I took a very different approach. I would ask people, what their career goal really was. And sometimes they would say, well, I can't do it because of this little gap. And so we would actually try to manufacture it. Now, mind you, that whatever they were doing had to meet the mission of our division. But if I could make that happen, then it progressed their career. But the irony is, I had no everybody staying because they knew they could be developed while they were working with me.
I love that. You're unique in that, Madelyn, and what a gift it was to people who worked with you, because I can say today, the way my clients choose us, I equally choose them. And it's with that type of mindset, because we don't take every project that comes in. I have to know that the leadership on top will lift them up, will work with them and hear them, know what matters. And believe me, my clients, I have the best clients in the Bay Area. And I am so grateful every day to play in their sandbox, because they mentor me and they make me better. And the thing that I find really what it comes down to is all the people that are listening to this program. If I was to give a couple key pieces right now, it really is self-confidence. And again, that sounds, there's two ways to look at it. We have confidence in our skill set. A lot of people I talk to, boy, they can be the best engineers. They know marketing, they know what they know well. But when I go deeper on their personal transformation or their personal growth, that's where they get stuck. Because a lot of us have been trained to be on this treadmill for a career. If you do A, you get B. If you stay so long, you will be here. And the truth is that thought process has shifted immensely. And COVID shook it up, because now we have hybrid offices, we have remote. Employers now have a bigger pool to choose from, a bigger talent pool. So then it comes back to what makes you light up? What makes you shine? What is it that you can add as value? But more importantly, how can you collaborate? When I interview candidates, I always ask, what would be an exciting situation to be in where you could contribute and collaborate? And then when they start talking, I end up finding out so many beautiful skills that aren't on that resume.
Yeah.
So that's where I say when you become the CEO of your career, this is one of the biggest decisions you'll make in your life. If it's a career and not a job, because there's a big difference.
Yes.
And we've all had them. And I've had the jobs that have helped me, in hardships at times because it's just what I could get. And that was okay because I was grateful, that I still could do that. I think if you can take that deep breath and slow down long enough to really look at you. Who are you? What are you? What is it that would you hire you? It's interesting. People in general look at a career search more from the mindset of I need the perfect resume. And then if I send out 100 resumes, the odds are I'll get 10 interviews. And I hear this from candidates. And what frustrates us on our end sometimes is we get resumes that make no sense, why they even applied. And as I was sharing with Deborah the other day, I said a lot of times what you'll find is people have a quota to fill to get their unemployment. So you're going to see some marketing person applying for my managing director for $1 billion real estate company. And I'm like, okay, what? Like, I don't get this. So I would say, and then you frustrate yourself. Then you'll think, well, I sent out 100 resumes. Why didn't anyone contact me? Well, but I think what happens is we get in that fear-based, reaction. And I've been there. I've done that. I've applied for some of the silliest things way back early on. And I think now in hindsight, I know why I didn't get it, because if I was true to listening to the inner voice and my intuition, I knew what I was doing. I wasn't meant for those jobs.
Yeah.
But it was that mindset that I was given at one point, right?
Wow. You have talked about a worthy path. I love that phrase. And what you've just been talking about kind of hints at that if you're just thrashing around to find a job, that's not as productive as presumably this worthy path. I wonder if you'd talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would say today, specifically today, because I've seen so much change. The more clear you are with yourself, and it means, I would say before you even start a career search, take out your legal tablet. I have some handouts I designed, the pro and con list, and they're old school. And what I will share with people is first do that brain dump. Take time, light a candle, get a cup of tea or coffee, and just have that quiet time, because this is about you. This is about your journey. And it's not for anybody else, but be authentic with yourself. So when you're writing out, I usually have people do 3 of these homework sheets. And the first one is be in the moment. If you could wave that wand, what would that look like? Ooh. And I said, even if it's something that you've always wanted to do, but because of these 5 reasons you can't, or you think you can't in that moment, just put it out on paper. It's powerful. All the pros and then the cons. And then again, when we talk about this in the book, what you referenced, it's very true. The next page, what do you want that environment to look like? Do you want more intellectual people to work with? Do you want strategic? Do you want kind? Do you want the family setting, like a small atmosphere? Do you want a big corporate where you can get lost in the, pool of people out in front, in those silos, if you will? And even that doesn't matter. It's your truth. It's what resonates with you. So then you take another sheet, and I actually did this, and I think when we talked about it, I won't go into detail, but in 2008, we had a major shift in our life. And we had a coffee house in Sausalito, and we had hired over 50 people. So I know from an employee standpoint too what hiring means. But all that changed during the recession. And I remember sitting down with these sheets, and I literally wrote what I wanted to look like. I wanted to be, you're going to love this one. I only wanted to be a couple miles from home. So if there was an earthquake, because I live on 3 earthquake faults,
Yes. Yeah.
I needed to get to my children and to my husband. And I wanted an office with a window. If I could see Mount Tam, or if I could see trees and the beautiful surroundings where I live. And so when I wrote those, the first one was all about me. What was it? I needed to be back in search. I missed connecting with people, helping people, serving people.
Yeah.
And so that was a beautiful list. Then the next one was about that visual. Then the last one is, I thought, okay, how many of these companies are in Marin County? Because that's where I live. And I came up with 6 particular search staffing companies. And then I created my resume to work from that angle. And so when I talk about a worthy path, then I did all my research on the 6 companies that I felt aligned with. And it was fascinating because once I did this process, and I had to believe, which in myself, that I knew something would show up. It was within less than a week that a former board member, when I was on the Sausalito Chamber, knew me and knew my work, and then found out I was available. And she worked with a fabulous staffing agency here in Marin. She called me and she said, Carol Ann, would you be open to being a director of direct hires in Marin, which means full-time people? And I said, oh my gosh, Deborah, I'd be honored. And so I went for the interview, and the senior vice president, and we talked, and well, anyway, I had an offer within 48 hours to join their team. And it was, it showed up because I did the homework.
But there's another piece to this that I know you know it. You were fleshing out the story that you wanted to live into.
Yes.
Now, I've done a lot of work on future stories. I don't usually talk about this on the show, but I was deeply involved with using storytelling in business. Starting 20 years ago. And one of the actual exercises I did was to have groups define that future story. I said, but you have to see it. And you have to put all the detail in, which is what I loved about your questions. Where was it? Was there a window in your office? I mean, that helps you actually see it, and that energizes you to make it happen. So I just love.
Madelyn, I love what you're saying, because today, truly, everything is about energy. It's all thought. Think of this, and this is powerful and profound. Your thought becomes things. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, oh, they're not going to like me, I'm going to be an imposter, blah, 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 and you listen to that little voice, you're right. It's not going to show up. But if you believe, I can tell you at 25, after I went to that seminar, and then I was back in Eau Claire, Wisconsin at that time, and right prior, I did TV commercials and a lot of print work in Minneapolis as like the all-American girl. And I remember looking at people, and I'd find great faces, and I would send them to my agent in Minnesota. And then one day it came to me, I should have my own agency. Why not? I know how to recruit, find talent. So I did the homework to figure that out. Within 6 months, I opened, as you acknowledged, my international modeling and talent agency. And then I had a goal. I wanted to work with Eileen Ford out of New York City.
Yeah.
I thought if I worked with anyone, I wanted to work with the best.
Absolutely.
I literally sat down, did this mindful approach. How would I make that happen? And there's something about 6 months for me. It's a timeline, but literally 6 months into my opening this agency, and I was working with some of the biggest, back there it was Dayton's and Target for print work for my talent and things. I was placing them. I literally got an invitation for a Midwest model search, 500 girls, 5 states. So I submitted, talent. There were 5 finalists. And this was with Eileen Ford, who herself looked at the photos. 3 of them came from my agency. And the girl who won that contest was my gal, Jenny Klatt, who went on to have a really nice career with Ford models. That began a 10-year relationship with Eileen Ford. And we even placed Big and Beautiful, Julie Wall, who was one of the most amazing humans. But I would see, this is what I find fascinating. And you hear this when people think you're a success overnight. This has been a 35-year story. And I did this same type of recruiting and search work in the modeling and talent as I do today with a billion-dollar real estate company. Because really, Madelyn, what it comes down to is I want to hear you. I want to hear your story. I want to know what matters to you. I want to know that if you're having a moment of darkness or sadness, it's okay. It's part of the journey. It doesn't define you, because I've been there. I really, like I told you, I could do stand-up comedy on my life. And when I look at the bigger picture, I know that those experiences has allowed me to have more compassion for people that maybe lost everything like we did in 2008. And then you have to rebuild yourself and find that point in your life that you're like, it's going to be okay. And I didn't need that anyway. And the truth is, when that happened, as I shared with you when we interviewed, it got me back into search. And for today, I am grateful every waking moment when I light my candle and do my meditation in the morning that I get to do what I do. Yeah. Now, granted, there's some days I have bad hair days, like everyone, and that's when I step back and I bake. Like I told you, I love to bake. So you just can't take it too seriously. You know what? If you do the work, if you do the transformational work, and you really work with a good mindset, come from a frame of anything is possible. Even in the darkest times, anything is possible.
Now, when you lost your business, I gather, in 2008, you may have already answered this question, but my shtick is resilience. So there was something in your life that you looked at that situation and you made the decision to move on. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so we had a coffee house in Sausalito. My husband always wanted to do that. We put our life savings into it. I was the CEO at the Sausalito Chamber, loved what I did. Abruptly overnight, 2008, happened to a lot of people, but our coffee house closed. We lost everything we put into it. We lost our home, cars. Like it was entertaining, is what I say today. You just go, wow, how could that happen to us? And then the self-doubt would come in. We weren't smart enough. We should have done this different, and all that talk. And then I finally had to say, stop. And my husband, who's an award-winning writer who co-authored the book with us, or me, I said, honey, write. You're a brilliant writer. That's what you need to do. And I said, it's time. I need to get back into search. But the resilience part was it, and it happened to a lot of people. And in Marin, I saw people that had the McMansions in back of me. We live in Tiburon, a beautiful community by the water, and we live in a sweet house from the 50s. But those people, when they lost their homes and they were friends, would come to me. And this is before I even got back into search, because they knew I did that work prior, and asked to help write resumes. How do I get a job? How do I do it? So I made it about other people, Madelyn. I found in my deepest moment that my gift was helping others. And I had that. And because, you know what, I love the saying, it's a Buddhist saying, that we are all walking each other home. And when you look at how simple that is, I'm not saying I can help everyone, because it also has to come from their place. They have to be willing to do the work. They have to be willing to shift the mindset or dedicate to a healthy walking routine every day.
Yeah,
I believe health is critical underpinnings to a good mindset.
agreed.
So what we feed our bodies will feed our mind. What we feed our soul and spirit feeds the mind. When I have everything mind, body, soul aligned.
Hmm.
So in that moment, I knew that I wouldn't be taking any of that with me if I croaked that day, but I didn't. We had our health, we had our son. And the miracle that showed up for us is we had an incredible lady that used to come into our coffee house that knew us. And we used to host more nonprofit things at our coffee house as a gift. We were known as the place. People would come and we would do book signings and knitting clubs. And oh my goodness, also, it was where you could come and
Yeah.
just be. And they recommended a friend in Orinda, which was an hour away. Now, we had never met this woman ever. And because when you lose your home and you have like 30 days to figure it out and you hardly have any money, you think, I'm going to be homeless now. That's not fun. And whatever. We go out to interview with this woman, Dell, who is my angel, my guardian angel in my life. She met us. She fell in love with her son, Jack. And she said, come live with me. Come
Oh,
stay. She had a
isn't that
beautiful guest
marvelous? Yeah.
stay. Yeah, I tell you what, it shows the good in human. And that's where today, even if people could get out of their head and set ego aside, not make a position political, not make it about COVID, not make it about stuff. You
Mhm.
got to come back to your heart place. You
Mhm.
need to get centered, because when you do, it really shows up for you. And
There's one thing you said, Carol Ann, that I really want to call out to the audience. I asked you what got you through that moment where you had to decide you were going to move forward, that resilient moment. And what I heard you say was that you came back to who you really were. You drew upon your real identity. An identity, having a clear sense of self, of who you are, is one of the greatest strengths that underlies resilience. So, for those in the audience, this is an area that Carol Ann's been talking about that is just so powerful, not only to succeed from a business perspective, but it really builds your resilience. Thank you, Carol Ann, for that story. Amazing.
thank you, Madeline. And we all have stories, and we either follow faith in ourselves or we follow fear. And we've got to move from the fear. And right now, and we all are feeling it, you wonder if the world's going to be blown up tomorrow with nukes. I mean, I don't even get near the TV. I was telling my husband last night, I said, Eric, I can't do TV. While I know it's an issue, I'm going to believe in the bigger, higher energy in this world, that there's too many good people and we all have too many wonderful things to do and contribute to help each other, become what we came to be.
Yeah.
Why are we here? And again, that gets back to that self-transformation. When I met Eric, he used to tease me. I had the biggest self-help library. And we have a library now in our son's room that he moved out. We put like several thousand books in this beautiful, beautiful shelves. And like I get my shelves now. And I said, and he goes, have they really helped you? And I said, I don't know, have they? And he laughs and he said, thank goodness, because I was always called the Pollyanna. Like I was too happy, too positive. But you know what? It is resilience, Madeline. And back to your point, and even what you do, we can either choose to be bitter or better.
Yeah.
And the truth is that if you ever feel like you're going crazy during this career search time, know that you are not crazy. The situation is crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah.
The
This
situation.
this reminds me of another aspect of what we've been talking about. Oftentimes, when we think of recruiting or going after jobs, it's for young people who are entering the workforce. an incredibly important time. And I think our young people are really suffering right now for a lot of reasons. But there's also that mid-career person who
Mhm.
maybe was not following, or even maybe the person who didn't even know who he or she really was. How do you talk about that place where people finally decide to make a pivot? And what are some things they need to be thinking about? Maybe you've already talked about it, but I always want to make sure we touch on that aspect.
Oh, absolutely. I would say it does come back to doing like the pro con list.
Mm-hmm.
First, the brain down, really, because again, I've coached, as you have, a lot of people in the midlife
Mm.
crisis. Is it
Yes.
time? Can I do a startup? Can I, work with so and so? It's a risk. There again, midlife to me is an incredible opportunity to show up, possibly for what you were meant to do. Because again, we are the way we all, if you're in our age range, from the 80s, 90s, you were to get that job, stay at it 20, 30 years, go up the ladder,
Mm.
and then you retire. And
Yeah.
we've had friends that did that. And when they talk to us, they'll say to Eric and I, you guys have had the most phenomenal careers. You did the coffee house, you had win loss. I didn't risk. I stayed and played it safe.
Mhm.
So when someone's in that midlife place, I think it's actually a wonderful opportunity. Again, it's don't judge yourself. If it's good, bad, right, or wrong. No one's judging you. But if you decide you want to shift or into a new vertical, again, look at the skill sets that you can bring to that vertical. Look at how you would get there. Really, this is where the CEO of your life comes in. Think of how would you build that company? How would you build
Mm.
you? How do you build your conversation? And it gets actually very exciting. I just had goosebumps because another big shift that happened to me 7 years ago, I was working for a contingency firm and I did their C-levels. And so I would be put on these projects and I was working a huge project, huge. And this really came midlife, but a little later because I'm a little older than that. But it was a major wake up call. And I loved this woman. I loved what the project was and the people, or I thought I did. And I bought into being the best people, and I did. The day we
Carol
were to
you
sign up,
Carol you're breaking up just a little bit, so I need for you to repeat that last sentence.
just that, I was really taught to be that good worker bee, that person that contributed the value. And I was doing remote work at the time, and I found the number one guy in the country for this conversation we were working on. He came up to interview and to sign the contract on a Friday. Prior to that couple days, I was getting packages delivered from this person and basically saying I was no longer part of her agency. And it was because the
Mm.
fee was going to be pretty substantial. And long story short, I was fired like in an email. And I didn't even know what I was fired for, other than the fact that she wanted the whole enchilada. In the moment, I sat at my desk and I thought, how could this be? What did I miss? What did I not, the red flags, and they were all over.
Mm.
I just chose not to see them because I wanted that safe position. And it was fascinating because our son, Jack, who was at the time a junior in high school, and he came in my office and I was sobbing, and my husband, Eric, whatever. He goes, Mom, what are you waiting for? He goes, you help everyone else make so much money. Start your own agency. You did it before. The time's now. And this is coming from a guy who was one of the top rowers in the country, top 50 rowers. He rowed for Marin Crew. And if anybody knows about rowing and the head of the Charles out there on the East Coast, he went to the head of the Charles. They were second in the country. He would come home with blisters, bleeding hands, exhausted, but his mindset was nothing was going to get in his way. And
Wow.
that moment was another pivotal moment that I thought, wow, but I don't have a website. I don't have this. I thought of all the reasons I couldn't. And you know what was fascinating? My husband, Eric, says, we're unplugging you. And Jack said, yep, Mom, you get a week off. We're going to figure it out. And my husband went down and got the doing business as license. He called a friend that did websites. Within a week, I had the most breathtaking website. I had people show up in my life. I could just cry because somebody believed in me.
Yeah.
So even when we are at the pinnacles at our careers and we think everybody has it figured out, there's always those moments still that we need that support, right? And people rallied around me. And I remember there was a client too, actually, that I had spoken to a year ago because I signed a non-compete clause. I wouldn't touch anybody. Through a friend, someone said, you've got to talk to this person because he sounds like you. He resonates. Well, that person turned out to be our largest, most incredible client in the renewable energy space. And today he's one of my mentors and dear friends, and we've had 38 placements with his company. And my other mentor was one of the top commercial tenant improvement builders here in Marin, who believed in me and gave me a small search. And I will forever be grateful for those two gentlemen. And they helped me launch my career today, and then gave me referrals because they knew my work. They knew I was different. And so if I can give back to anybody, even listening to this program, you have to have self-love, self-care, meditation. In the mornings, I practice. My days start 10, 15 minutes. If I can do an hour, and I get my journal and I set my intention. I want to have the best magical day ever. And I bring in, yeah.
I hate to do this because I can't believe our time is almost up. and your stories are magical. Let's wrap this a little bit. I have heard so many wonderful strategies from you. I love your idea of the pro-con list and really, doing the visions. If there's just one thing that you would say to the audience as a final gift to them, because I love the fact that you like to gift people, what would it be?
What's coming to me in this moment is it's about being the right person, and however that is for you. Don't try to fit into, a peg in a round hole. Become the best human wherever you are in your life. If you're just starting out, even out of college, and I've coached a lot of kids there, don't make assumptions. Don't assume. And the other thing is be kind to the employers. Instead of being frustrated that you didn't get that position, bless it, because the next one is going to be so much better. I can promise you that, because it's happened to me. I've lived it. So I would really say become the right person. Become the CEO, of your journey. And it will gift you in ways you can't even imagine.
Carol-Ann, thank you so much. This has been so much fun to have this conversation. Oh, wow. So,
well, again, I am grateful for you and the work you do for everyone, and to everyone who's listening to us. It's all about possibilities, and they're out there. They're out there for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. What an amazing person this Carol-Ann is. I so appreciate what you've done. I mean, she talked about the pro-con list, which I think is just tremendous. And the idea that you really have to know and think again about who you are. I think finally I understand you can be the CEO of your career. And it begins with that visioning. And I also had a renewed sense that the path that I'm on is a worthwhile path. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Unlocked. And if you have, make a comment in social media about what you learned and might do differently as a result. And if you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, click that like button, or better yet, subscribe or follow me. And please check out my book, Unlocked, on Amazon for practices that actually work. Now, I am very excited to announce something entirely new. You have asked for more, more than TV, more than blogs, more than my book. And I asked you for your concerns, and I heard the ones you sent to me. And they are now all represented in the more that I am announcing. On October 17, I will be offering for the first time a free workshop on unlocking resilience in your own life. And if you're interested, please make sure that you're on my mailing list to receive the detailed information. Just go to madelynblair.com/contact and complete the form. And be sure to note that you want information on how to access the workshop. I know that you will not be disappointed. Wow, I want to thank you again so much for joining us on this segment of Unlocked. I'm still somewhat blown away with what has transpired today and the wonderful stories that Carol Ann has shared with us. This is Madelyn Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock your resilience.